Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach, and round 2 got underway for the JLT Community Series, and I'm going to run you through everything SuperCoach relevant from the weekend. Couple of things off the top. I did not see a minute of footy over the weekend, working all weekend, not a owner of Foxtel either. I listened to a reasonable amount and have also read up on quite a bit, so please forgive me if I'm not absolutely in touch with everything that happened. But I'm certainly well around the stats and match reports. Unfortunately, didn't see it. Secondly, thanks for getting onto my Facebook page and giving that a like if you did. If you haven't, definitely get along to that and give it a like. Bit of content coming through there as well. And thirdly, you'll notice as I go through these reviews, I don't talk about the actual SuperCoach points. I think they're a little bit irrelevant at this stage of the year. Given the changing of time in the game and different players playing a certain amount of the game time, there's more players. We all know that there's 3,300 points to go around. I just feel these SuperCoach tallies are a little skewed, and it's really more about talking about their stats and combining it with their game time and making a judgment call from that, rather than just saying a random SuperCoach number. So I guess there's a couple of little housekeeping things off the top, but I'll run you through a few stats now, starting with St Kilda and Port Adelaide on the Thursday night there. Not a stack to really take out this game. No Montagna, no Freeman for the Saints, but Jack Stephen was outstanding. Had an enormous opening start to the game, 21 touches from just 39% game time. I wouldn't be getting too sucked into Jack. I think he's probably capable of those enormous games, but I feel his ceiling isn't quite there across the whole season. I think we've seen him have equally quiet games as well as your 150s, but that was an example of how he can rack up the ball at will. And Nick Riewoldt had your 14 touches, 6 marks. I wouldn't really be starting him, but he's very tempting. I think he's just going to play that great role where he roams around on the wing, half forward, pushes where he needs to be, and again, he'll be right up there for marks per game. So I think he'll be a real good option for our forward lines. Not many will start with him, so it could be a point of difference, but food for thought. As for Port Adelaide, there weren't too many big outs, just no Robbie Gray. But of course, Chad Wingard really looked the goods. A lot of talk about him playing through the midfield. Had the 18 touches, enjoyed 9 of those being contested, and I think he's really got to start to be a tempter. I think, what did he play? 50%, oh no, that's disposal efficiency. I've got the wrong efficiency there. I think he played most of the game anyway. 4 clearances, and that midfield role is there. So he's got to be a little bit of a tempter. Sort of he and Josh Caddy are in similar boats, I feel. 2 guys who'll be giving great opportunity. 2 guys that have maybe hurt us in the past. And I think he could be a smoky. He's been in my team at stages through the pre-season. He's currently not. I'm currently on the Caddy bandwagon. And Heaney also in front of him. But I think Wingard is a match winner, and if you get a little bit more of that accumulation with his possession rather than just that big time impact that we know he's got, well, it could be very damaging. Semi Pepper, just the 12 touches from his 67% game time, but I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I mean, he seems like an assured round 1 starter. Hamish Hartlett, 8 touches, 6 tackles from your 87% game time. I'd just about be putting a line through him, to be honest. I think he's probably shown us that he's playing that half-back role and is part of the defensive 6 now. Don't see midfield time coming his way. Probably better options. So unless he does something out of the ordinary, I really think his 2 games so far probably shown us where he's at. Through intra-club and all practice games, it's looked more of a defensive role. Riley Bonner, gee, what a difference one game makes. He played 1 game in 2016. If he didn't play that game, he would be on all our radars. Keep him in mind for your draft team. Played the 1 game last year, got 76, therefore I think he's priced around the 270, 280. But he's got dash, he's got flair, run out of the back line alongside Pittard, and I think he would be a really good selection if he was a little bit cheaper. He's a bit awkward at that price. Brett Eddy, 6 touches, kicked the 3 behinds from half your game. but he certainly showed enough signs, took the 5 marks. He's looking like a likely round 1 starter. Got his opportunity, didn't convert the goals, but I think he's probably done enough to really be in the mix. Paddy Ryder, probably the opposite can be said for that. He didn't do too much convincing. 70% of the game time he played, just 4 touches, 6 hit-outs. I'm unsure of what he's going to be. I've been a critic of Ryder through the pre-season, and people have criticised that view. But I just think that he's really not going to be in the top echelon of rucks or forwards. And I think there's a fair amount of risk associated with him. At this stage, he hasn't really shown us otherwise. People have really jumped on board. I don't know whether it's the excitement factor around him, his X factor, his price tag, his new role that people talk about. He has had 1 season at Port Adelaide and it did not work. So just keep that in mind. I'm far from sold on him. But as we move into Richmond and Adelaide on the Friday night, which was a pretty good game and pretty good for SuperCoach as well, the bit that came out. No Shai Bolton, no Alex Rance, no Shawnee Hampson for Richmond. Of course, the Hampson part becomes relevant when we talk about this man. Toby Nankervis, 15 touches, 8 contested, 14 hit-outs, 2 tackles, is a tackling machine. Talking to a mate the other day, he said he reminds him of Shane Mumford, and I reckon he's on the money there. He's got a lot of Mumford about him, and he's come right into my calculations. I think at his price, which is about $366, I think, he must be considered if he has another good game like this, especially if Hampson does drop down to your number 2 ruck. If Nankervis really takes that number 1 role, starts doing the majority of the ruck work and can play forward, has shown that throughout all his footy, then I think he must be considered. I think a lot of people are losing a bit of trust with Goldstein, Stephen Martin. People are a bit unsure whether he'll share the ruck load. Maybe Nankervis could be our saving grace, as the likes of Giles and Sandilands have a lot of risk about them. Maybe it's Nankervis. Wait and see, but he certainly did a lot of things right on Friday night. Josh Caddy also did a fair bit right. 21 touches, 6 of those were kicks, so does win a lot of your inside ball, and that was reflected with 10 contested possessions and 3 clearances from your 67% game time. I'm all about him. I'm on board. I think he's playing the role he's always wanted to play, and I think he'll get that great opportunity, and I expect him to be a very good averager for the Tigers. Dan Butler, 17 touches, 4 tackles, 6 inside 50s. I think he's a very good chance to play round 1. Was emergency a number of times for the Tigers last year. A Ballarat boy, so I'll probably be writing about him a little bit, but he's been looking to debut for some time. He's your small forward sort of role. Will probably do a lot of pressurising, kick the odd goal, and I think in our forward lines he could be a nice rookie price option if he can get himself in that round 1 side. And Dion Prestia, 21 touches, 61% game time, an equal team high 5 clearances. You wouldn't pick him. You'd be a brave man to pick him, but I tell you what, I wouldn't be surprised if he averages really well. I'm a big fan of Prestia. I even nearly picked him, I think, last year before that knee soreness kept on going in his pre-season. But I reckon he's a gun. I think he'll have a great season at the Tigers. Great point of difference pick. You probably would be too cautious that he couldn't really explode. But I tell you what, I'll be trying to snap him up in my draft, that's for sure. As we move along to Adelaide, key outs there. Brad Crouch, of course, didn't play. Rory Sloane, Scotty Thompson, but nothing too drastic. Bear with me, I'm also struggling with a little bit of a cold as well, so you may have picked that up, but we'll work through the video nonetheless. For the Crows, Rory Laird was the standout, 33 touches, dominant performance. I've raved about him through the pre-season. Plain and simple, bloody get on board. Get on board, he's going to be an outstanding pick for your season. Consistent. And my one knock on him was he doesn't win too much hard ball. Well, 15 contested possessions really flies in the face of that and suggests a more inside midfield role. Now, of course, the names I mentioned, Sloane, Thompson, Crouch, he's not going to get that much inside pill all the time, but it shows he's got that to his bow. So I think if there was any question that he could be just easily shut down as a pure outside player, probably showed that that was incorrect the other night. Gertley Hampton, of course, get him around 160 odd K in our back line. 16 touches, 2 goals. From memory, tracking the game, I think he started somewhat slow. We're probably wanting him to run through the midfield, and by all reports, he didn't really do that too much. And of course, he did kick the 2 goals as well. So while he scored nicely, I'm not sure it was in the exact position we would have wanted, but certainly scored well, would have impressed the coaches. He'll be thoroughly in the mix when round 1 teams are being selected, I would imagine. And he's certainly one to keep on our radar. As is Harrison Wigg, 23 touches, 67% game time. And he's a fantastic option, I think. Will be a real chance to make his way in the Adelaide Crows lineup. A very good player in the Sandful, and I think his time could be now. So stay tuned on that one. Of course, it all comes down to the round 1 teams, but a very good chance, I would imagine. Andy Otten, returning defender, returning from injury. He's getting on a bit, had just 17 touches, finding his way back into footy. If he were to get a spot in the round 1 lineup, you would have to consider him just because he's cheap, but I wouldn't have thought he'd be an enormous scorer. And of course, the injury history is a little concerning, but nonetheless worth noting. Melbourne and Carlton, not too many notable outs for the Ds, but Christian Petrarca, the man is an absolute beast, and boy am I tempted to pick the lad. I'm a big fan of him last year, and he's doing all the right things. 19 touches, 10 contested, 4 goals. And I think it was through the midfield a little bit too. Certainly wasn't just playing that half forward role, kicking 4 from the forward line. He will push into the midfield as well. I think he's ready to explode, I really do. I don't think I'm going to have the balls to pick him, if I'm being brutally honest. I mean, he's priced awkward as hell for a bloke who's still very raw, but just has unbelievable ability and is physically ready to go. I couldn't see myself picking him because we've got a lot of locks in our forward line, and my top 4 forwards, like many, Reid, Dalhouse, McRae, Caddy and Heaney, and I couldn't see that changing. But boy, I wouldn't be surprised if he nudges 100 this year. High 90s, mid 90s for sure. I reckon he's a real good chance to go your 90 to 95. But again, there's always that risk. You try to minimise your risk as much as you can in your SuperCoach side, and he's probably got a little bit too much risk associated with him. But the upside is huge. Christian Salem, you probably wouldn't pick him either, but he's starting to find his way at AFL footy. I think he could be a handy scorer this season, but again, probably awkwardly priced. Bernie Vince had the 23 touches, played that sweeping role off the half-back line. Reasonable pick, will be point of difference. I'm a bit concerned that he probably won't always be able to sweep with such freedom. That was evident in the back end of last year. He did play more off half-back and it didn't suit him. I think Bernie really needs to be playing midfield minutes to be considered in our side, so maybe tread with caution on that one. And Michael Hibberd, 13 touches from 77% game time. Didn't set the world on fire. Again, it's one I would probably like to see and see how he looked, see how he played, but certainly by the numbers didn't really catch our eye, and probably a few warning signs, as I've signalled throughout in my previews, a few signals coming our way to maybe just be careful on Michael Hibberd. As for the Blues, Sam Docherty and Cade Simpson do what they like. They're capable of doing whatever they please, seemingly. They're the users off a half-back line. The Blues weren't great, but they were steady as always. Docherty, 24 touches at 96% efficiency. Cade Simpson, 21 at 82. So you'll get that from them. It's a know what you're going to get factor. I'm not picking Docherty because I do feel I can get him cheaper. And I think we've got a lot of great options in the back line. Ree Adams, Laird, etc. But I really do think that Docherty will be again in the top 6 defenders. And if you do choose to start with him, well, I can't really argue. I mean, you pay the price, I think you'll get the points. But he certainly will drop. He will drop. It's just a matter of how much from that price tag. Mark Murphy, 20 touches. Again, didn't set the world on fire. Played a couple of different positions. Working his way back into it. Probably hasn't sold us enough to pick him yet. So I'd be a little bit careful. But he is well priced. If he's looking fit, if you saw the game and you like what you saw, I think in the last quarter he mainly played the back line. So that could be something that you note when dissecting these stats. But certainly was reasonable. And Jared Pickett came on, kicked a couple from memory, 5 touches, just the 44% game time. So a little concerning the fact that he wasn't a starter, but did come on and have a bit of impact. He'll be in the mix. I mean, you wouldn't lock him in, but I think he will be in the mix for sure. Moving over to West Coast and Fremantle. Not a stack from this game, to be honest. Excuse me. West Coast, as I said last week, they're just not going to offer us much. I think it's as plain as simple as that. A lot of talk about Sam Mitchell, 28 touches, the Mitchell of old. Don't be silly. Don't get sucked into him. Don't pick him. No tackles, 4 contested possessions. I really don't think he is the Sam of old. The numbers, he'll still rack up the ball because he's a smart footballer. But I think he's more your 105 average guy. Your 100 to 105. Not your 110 to 113, 14, what he once was. And I think the difference is that he is a little more outside now, using his foot skills, linking up. I think you'll see more your Pritis and those sort of fellas working heavily on the inside. But Mitchell is a great architect with the footy. He sees the game as good as anyone and has beautiful foot skills off both feet. So I guess the last few years, coaches alike have liked to use him more outside. And I think that's been reflective in his SuperCoach scores. That he's gone from a premium to just sub-premium, just off it a little bit. And I don't think his changing clubs will bring him back to it. And I feel that was shown on the weekend. Dom Sheed, I think he's a gun in the making. 19 touches from his 62% game time. Probably too awkward to pick him, to be honest, but I really think he's a great player. Along with Gaff, they're 2 of the more damaging outside mids in the comp. Josh Kennedy, 11 kicks, no handballs, 5 goals. A classic Josh Kennedy game. I see a few people talking about this is the year of the key position forward and things like that. And he and Lynch and Gunston are ones that people will talk about and consider. You'll get those sort of games. You know, he beat up on a poor opposition. I think West Coast had about 200 more touches than the Dockers. Kennedy, not for me. I think he's too much of a roller coaster. I know he's had good numbers, but I just think we've got great depth in our forward line this year with some really solid midfield options. And I don't think there is a need to really pick a key forward. And if I were, Kennedy's probably 3 or 4 on the list of guys I would be picking. So, food for thought there. As for the Dockers, just finally, Nathan Vardy, Redden, didn't really do much at all. Pretty much, if you were considering them or waiting to see what they did, they really didn't enhance their chances at all. As for the Dockers, there was just one man, Nat Fyfe. Lock him in, grab the key, throw it as far as you can, put it in a bottle, put it in the ocean, bugger it off. You don't need that key because you can lock him away. 22 touches, 16 contested, just a Nat Fyfe special. We know what we're going to get from him. Lachie Neale wasn't around, nor was Sandlands. But nonetheless, Fyfe doesn't matter who's around him. He does what he does with his own pill. He's the main man in there. Great to see him back, up and running, and he's simply a lock for our midfield. He'll be in many sides, should be in all sides. There's always a few that don't pick him for whatever reason, those popular players, but I think anyone who's taken it seriously will be on board Nat Fyfe. Gee, I'm going to get a drink. I'm struggling here. Give me a moment. I've been struggling with a cold all week, but nonetheless, that water went down a treat. I'll take a look at North Melbourne and Hawthorn. Bit of SuperCoach talk here, especially with the Hawks. I'll start with North Melbourne, though, and a little bit about their rucks. You know, Toddy Goldstein, hampered with a bit of an injury throughout. I think it was a finger complaint that he went off with. Ended up with 14 touches, 18 hit-outs, 65% game time. Good to see him back out there, and coaches will be happy about that, but perhaps a new concern coming to him and his selection, apart from the fact that he's had a poor pre-season, is Braden Proofs. Who? Exactly. Who is this bloke? He's come out of nowhere, unless you're really a North Melbourne fan. You know, we've seen his name on the list, but ask yourself honestly, could he get told us anything about the bloke apart from a month ago? Probably not, but he's come on and he's really impressed. 27 hit-outs, he's looking quite good. Not a big racker up of the pill, but a talk on the AFL website that he's pushing for round 1 selection. I think he'll have to be in the conversation, even if it's just to help Goldstein out with the initial load as Goldstein's workload and training loads come back up. And all we need is just a slight bit of doubt that Goldstein will be the main man in the ruck and we rule him out. So that in combination with his poor preparation, I think it's definitely starting to look like Goldstein might not be an option, which really, a month ago, he looked like an absolute lock, but things haven't happened for him. He's struggled to get back out in the park, and all of a sudden Bruce is starting to play well, and maybe he will help shoulder the load even for the first 4 to 6 weeks until Goldstein really gets to 100% full fitness. And we can't be having that. We can't be having one of our number 1 rucks sharing the load. So we'll have to wait and see, but it certainly could be a likely outcome. Shawnee Higgins continues to impress. There'll be a few who get sucked in. He had 24 touches, kicked a goal, uses it well, 83% disposal efficiency. Do not pick him. Come on, guys. Come on. I mean, the bloke is a trap. A hammy will pop. He'll do something. I know he's had a better run of injury of late, and I guess first impressions last a long time. His injury record isn't as bad over the last 2 to 3 years, but he is always a risk, and I just don't think, as I've said before, there's a lot of good options out there, and Higgins, he's got to be blacklisted forever. I think it's as simple as that. So as much as he is impressing through this pre-season, I don't think we can select him, but Mitchell Hibberd also looked good, 25 touches, turn it over a bit, 6 clangers, but he's winning the ball, and I think he'll be one of the North Melbourne youngsters that can really step up and get a fair few games this year. As for the Hawks, it was probably the talking point of the weekend as far as SuperCoach is concerned. Off the top, Tommy Mitchell is quickly becoming a lock for many a side. He's been in my team for months. There's no doubt I've been aware of him and been on board for a while. I hope people do not follow that suit. I hope he becomes somewhat unique. But when he's racking up 26 touches, 5 clearances, just doing exactly what we thought he would do given the opportunity, well, we're going to see his ownership go through the roof, I feel. Could head up towards 20%. Last time I checked it was about 10. So we'll have to wait and see. But he scored very nicely, had good numbers, and I think he's very likely to be a popular selection in our midfields. Can he break that top 10 midfield bracket? I guess that's a question. He's certainly forming a very good case at the moment. Jared Roughhead, 23 touches, even 2 centre clearances. He's starting in the midfield at times. He's roaming around, showing his athleticism, his flexibility as a player. He's a very, very tempting pick, and I think could be a very good pick. He's not in my team at the moment, and it's really because I am going with the mantra of avoiding mid-price picks this season. But he is just mounting a great case to pick him. If he's in your side or you're thinking about him, I couldn't blame you because he's looking like he could play. We talk about Nick Riewoldt as a key forward roaming around. Well, he could be playing a similar sort of role. More so maybe on the deck rather than your lead up and mark type like Riewoldt. But Roughhead is certainly looking like a very nice selection. Jaeger O'Meara, gee whiz, he continues to impress. 22 touches, 7 clearances. He's looking great. He's kicking goals from the boundary. He's doing the lot. Am I going to pick him? No. Am I being stubborn? Potentially. I cannot see myself picking him. I know he's convincing me. He's got me wrist and he's turning it. He wants to be selected in Shorty Superstars. But I'm sorry, mate, it's not going to happen. There's too much risk for mine. I know he's playing great footy. He's looking the goods. I'm considering him. I'm gone from not considering him to considering him. But in my heart of hearts, it's not going to happen. I look at my midfield and I'm wrapped with it. I've gone the guns. Simple fact is, who am I going to take out? And you might ask yourself the same question. He still has a lot of risk around him. It's only a couple of games. It's only a game and a half. He only played the half last week and didn't even play enormous minutes this time around. I think it was 60 to 70% game time. Could have been closer to 80, mind you. My mistake. But nonetheless, I don't know if I'll be picking him. I really doubt it. But he'll be in many teams and he is starting to really convince a lot. And you can't argue with the numbers. He's come back better than I thought. Jack Gunston, a case has got to be put forward that he's a very good selection too. 18 touches, 3 goals. He is very good at getting those sort of numbers, finding his way to a few goals, finding enough of the ball on the lead and on the ground. He's very versatile. He's good below his knees. As I said, with these key forwards, probably he and Tommy Lynch and Nick Riewoldt, probably key players and a few guys that I would consider as far as key forwards go. So maybe they might come across your radar. Lukey Hodge, now he is in my team at the moment, and in a few, not stacks, but I know a few people are considering him. Just the 11 touches, 4 tackles, a game I'd love to re-watch and see where he did line up from, stoppage to stoppage, and see how much midfield time he will get. I feel like he's either going to cruise through the pre-season, then get back to the good Luke Hodge that we know, or he will be taking a step back. And it's always a very tough call. I'm starting to have doubts about him, because if it goes wrong, if it goes pear-shaped, you're in real strife. But I do honestly believe that Hodge could be a top 8 defender, maybe top 6, and we're not going to get him cheaper. I think 480 is as cheap as we're going to get, and therefore it makes you go, well, maybe do I start with him? That's the conversation that's going in my head. At the moment, I'm probably leaning towards upgrading to someone who's a little more convincing and a little more reliable, but I think Hodge does have merit in his selection. As we move along to the final game of the week, and of course that was between Gold Coast and Essendon, another close game there. No Gary Ablett as per usual, no Tommy Lynch, no Aaron Hall, Matt Rosa or Jack Bowes. As for the Bombers, no Zach Merritt, Zah Harakis, Fantasia, Dyson Heppel, of course Myers getting injured, no James Kelly either. A couple of names to take away from this one. Will Brodie looked very good. 18 touches, kicked a couple of goals, and 11 contested. Now, touches are great, but when a draftee is winning contested ball, that says to me that he's ready to go inside, which is very, very important. If you can win your own ball at a young age and at that sort of price, it means you've got more opportunity to score points and you're not limited to the side playing well and getting it on the end of a couple. So I think it could be a very good selection. Certainly will be a little bit more popular after tonight's performance. Michael Barlow, unbelievable numbers, 31 touches, 5 tackles, 4 clearances, 70% game time. But I couldn't see anyone picking him. They're Barlow numbers, and he is capable of those real enormous numbers, but I just don't think, I read out the names just before, quite a few midfielders out. No doubt Barlow will probably average around the 100 mark, but he's a midfielder now. I couldn't see him being relevant with the real top end of scoring. David Swallow, of course, many people would have been keeping an eye out for him. 19 touches, 70% game time, and he is probably doing everything we want from him. He's getting enough of the ball, easing his way back in, working up to his top training load and working load, and I think it'd be a very popular pick. A lot of people now, the decision will be, can I start with O'Meara and Swallow? A lot of people were probably leaning towards, look, I'll go Swallow because he's a safer pick than O'Meara, even though Swallow's hardly gotten out in the park either. But that was a lot of people's thought process. Now O'Meara's impressing. I think a lot of people might even start with both of them and even a few rookies in there, and we could see others load up in other areas. So it'll be real interesting. I think SuperCoach is going to be great in regards to what structures people go with this season. Could make or break it, because there's a few different ways we could go about it unfolding as the pre-season goes on. As far as the Bombers, Jobe Watson continued to impress. 24 touches, played the 69% game time, and you can't fault him. I mean, he continues to play well. He's not going to be in my side for the reasons I've said time and time again. Fitness, longevity over the course of the season, and even scoring potential. I still question whether he's in the real top bracket, and at that price he needs to be if you're going to pick him. Josh Begley, 117k in the forward line. Kicked the 4 goals from your 10 touches. Certainly brought his way into consideration for our SuperCoach sides and a round 1 spot in that Bombers lineup. So he'll be a player that now we have to consider and monitor him throughout the remainder of the pre-season, and I think he could snag an early game. I mean, probably Fantasia or someone like that might be in front of him, of course, but kicking 4 goals and impressing certainly puts him in the mix. Whether he gets picked, we'll wait and see, but certainly worth noting. And Andrew McGrath, just the 16 touches, Again, it's a game I would have liked to see and make a judgment call on how he looked and how composed he was in the contest, but probably from a statistical point of view and from what I'm reading, he probably isn't convincing too many, and I feel that he's one his ownership might drop a little bit, particularly at that price tag. I mean, we've got a lot of guys starting to raise their hand for consideration that are cheaper, and at 220 or whatever he is, he really needs to be looking the goods. You need to be confident spending that sort of cash on a bloke who hasn't played a game. So I think definitely he'll be a player that probably makes way to earn a little bit more cash. You know, you can say probably 80 to 100k by going another rookie. So unless he really catches fire and convinces us in the remainder to the lead up to round 1, then he probably won't be in as many sides as he was, say, a month ago. That wraps things up anyway, guys. My voice has got through the whole podcast, which is impressive. Didn't know if it would, but thankfully it has. And thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you guys made it through the whole podcast as well. Obviously these are a bit longer, given I go through all the games and quite a few players. I try to keep it as efficient and as concise as possible, but some players are simply worth talking about more than others. Let me know if you feel I missed anyone. There probably is a player or two that I missed, but I felt I looked to outline most of the guys who are either impressed that are relevant, or maybe a few guys who put themselves on the SuperCoach selection map. So thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you got a little bit out of it. If you missed a game or two, hopefully I've brought you up to scratch within 20 or 30 minutes about what's been going on and how it affects your SuperCoach side. Subscribe to the channel as always. Give the video a like. Get along to the Facebook page as well. All you have to do is go to my Facebook video that I did just the other day, I think on Sunday. So, you know, that'll have it there. Or just type in Shorty SuperCoach into Facebook. I'm sure it'll come up. 50 people got on board just on today. So thanks very much for doing that. And if you're a subscriber to the channel, by all means get along to the Facebook, because that's where it's all going these days. You'll still get your content first up from the YouTube, but it'd be great to have a bit of I guess, a presence on the social media of Facebook. So get along to there and share that around to your mates and whatnot. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll wrap it up there. There'll be a few player profiles from now on until next week, and I'll be getting stuck into them early in this week. So look forward to those. I'll catch you soon.